She asked for a $3,500 performance bonus after single-handedly securing the biggest tech contract in company history. They laughed and said, "Performance bonuses are for executives only." 72 hours later, she didn't just quit. She took their $50 million client and their entire tech infrastructure team with her. The email hit CyberCore Solutions' executive floor at 7:42 a.m. on Thursday. Meridian Technologies has terminated our partnership effective immediately. By then, I was already in my new corner office across town, watching their $50 million contract signatures dry on my desk. My name is Evelyn Martinez, and I've spent the last 7 years building other people's tech empires. I'm 34 years old with a master's degree in cybersecurity and a reputation for turning impossible security projects into bulletproof systems. I had become the secret weapon at CyberCore Solutions that nobody wanted to admit they needed, until that Wednesday afternoon in March, when everything changed. I sat across from Derek Walsh in the glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Seattle. The proposal I had crafted lay between us, 89 pages detailing how I had single-handedly landed the Meridian Technologies contract. This deal was worth $52 million over 3 years and represented the largest cybersecurity implementation in the Pacific Northwest. "Evelyn," Derek began, adjusting his Rolex with that nervous tick I'd observed countless times. "You know we appreciate your technical expertise." Appreciate? The word tasted bitter before he even finished the sentence. I had spent 9 months courting Elena Vasquez, Meridian's chief information security officer. I made dozens of late-night calls debugging their legacy systems while Derek played tennis at his country club. I was reverse engineering malware and building custom firewalls from scratch while he attended executive leadership seminars in Napa Valley. "I'm requesting $3,500, Derek. Not $35,000. Not $350,000. Just $3,500. I kept my voice level. Professional. That's 0.007% of the contract value. He leaned back in his leather chair, actually smirking. "Evelyn, performance bonuses are allocated at the executive level. Company policy. Besides, you're already well compensated for your technical contributions." Company policy. The same policy that had been mysteriously waived when he awarded himself a $45,000 strategic leadership bonus last quarter. Angela from payroll had mentioned it during the holiday party. "Derek, I worked 90-hour weeks for 9 months. I missed my brother's wedding. I built 3 custom security protocols that didn't exist in the market. And that's what we pay your salary for." He slid the proposal back across the polished table. "Look, Evelyn, you should focus on what you do best, the technical work. Leave the business strategy to those of us with MBA training." That's when the door opened for the 2 p.m. senior staff meeting. Perfect timing as always. Derek had orchestrated this humiliation with surgical precision. "Everything good in here?" asked Michael Thompson, our VP of Operations, though his grin suggested he already knew the script. Just explaining to Evelyn why individual performance bonuses aren't in the budget, Derek announced loud enough for everyone filing in to hear. "We're all tightening our belts this quarter." Quiet laughter rippled through the room. I watched Patricia from HR hide her smile behind her tablet. Even Kevin, a junior developer I had mentored for 2 years, avoided eye contact. "Interesting," I said, standing slowly and gathering my documents with deliberate calm. The budget wasn't too tight for the executive retreat to Maui last month. The laughter died instantly. Derek's face flushed red. "That was a strategic planning session," he said quickly. "Of course it was." I tucked the proposal under my arm. "And this is just business." I walked out of that conference room with my head high, but inside, something fundamental had shifted. They could have simply said no. They could have offered a smaller amount, anything that acknowledged the value I had created. Instead, they chose public humiliation, a reminder of my place in their hierarchy. Back at my desk, I stared at the framed photo from the Meridian contract signing. Elena Vasquez had pulled me aside that day, gripped my shoulder firmly, and said, "You're the only person at CyberCore who actually understands what we need. The first person who didn't try to sell us software we don't need." I closed my eyes and let those words resonate. When I opened them, everything was crystal clear. They wanted to play corporate games?
Fine.
But they had forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't just another cog in their machine. I was the person holding their entire technical infrastructure together. The next morning, I arrived at CyberCore at 6:30 a.m., same as always. To anyone watching, nothing had changed. I nodded to the security guard, grabbed my usual double-shot espresso from the lobby cafe, and settled at my workstation like I had done over 1,000 times before. But underneath the routine, the plan was already in motion. First, I reviewed the Meridian contract, every clause, every specification, every carefully negotiated term. I had written 80% of the technical requirements myself. More importantly, I had insisted on a 30-day termination clause with consultant reassignment rights. Derek had barely glanced at the fine print when he signed it, too busy practicing his victory speech for the board. My personal laptop sat innocuously in my bag. During my lunch break, I would drive to a nearby cafe and begin transferring my personal notes and methodologies. Nothing proprietary to CyberCore, of course. Just my own innovations, security frameworks, and relationship maps built over 7 years in the industry. The real intellectual property wasn't in their servers. It was in my head and my professional network. Morning, Vic. Marcus appeared at my desk, coffee in hand. He was one of the few genuine people left in this place, a senior network architect who still believed merit mattered. I glanced around, ensuring we were alone. Just another day in paradise. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Heard about yesterday. That was brutal, even for Derek. Just corporate politics, I said, fingers already flying across my keyboard. Nothing I can't handle. You seem different today. Calmer. Different? If only he knew. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying the weight of other people's success on my shoulders. I was finally seeing CyberCore for what it really was, a house of cards built on other people's technical expertise, held together by executive ego and corporate buzzwords. I'm focused, I said and meant it, just focusing on what matters. That afternoon, I made a call from my car during what everyone assumed was a coffee run. My former colleague from my previous company, James Rodriguez, now ran a boutique cybersecurity firm in downtown Seattle. Evelyn Martinez, he answered on the first ring. This is unexpected. Hypothetically, I said, watching CyberCore's building through my windshield, if someone wanted to establish an independent cybersecurity consultancy quickly and quietly, what would that involve? The pause was brief, but loaded. Hypothetically, about a week if you know the right people. I happen to know several. Very discreet, very fast. Evelyn, are you finally breaking free from that corporate prison? Let's just say I'm exploring my options. About damn time. Send me the details when you're ready. And Evelyn? The industry needs more people like you running their own shows instead of making other people rich. That evening, I stayed late at the office. Nothing unusual there. I had been pulling extended hours for years. But instead of debugging CyberCore systems, I was researching LLC formations, business licensing requirements, and cybersecurity insurance policies. Each step was methodical, calculated, invisible to the executives who never paid attention to what happened after business hours anyway. The beautiful thing about being undervalued is that nobody monitors you closely. While Derek and his inner circle planned their next golf outing, I was building the foundation for their worst nightmare. My phone buzzed at 10:15 p.m. Elena Vasquez. Evelyn, I'll be in Seattle next week for the quarterly security review. Coffee? I have some concerns about our current implementation timeline. I stared at the message for a long moment. Elena always reached out to me directly. Not Derek. Not Michael.
Me.
Our professional relationship had evolved beyond the typical client-vendor dynamic months ago. She trusted my expertise, not CyberCore's marketing promises. Absolutely. I typed back. I have some ideas that might address your concerns. The office was nearly empty now, just overnight security and a few workaholics grinding away in their cubicles. I walked to the break room and made myself a cup of tea, letting the quiet settle around me. On the bulletin board, someone had posted photos from the Maui retreat, Derek front and center, champagne glass raised, surrounded by executives who had built their careers on other people's technical achievements. $3,500. That's all I had requested. A fraction of what they had spent on one executive dinner during their strategic planning session. I pulled out my personal notebook, the one I'd kept since my first day at CyberCore, filled with every breakthrough, every innovation, every client relationship I'd cultivated. Tomorrow, I would begin the formal process of establishing Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions. A lean operation focused on results instead of politics, built on genuine expertise rather than corporate hierarchy. They thought they were teaching me about knowing my place. Instead, they had taught me something far more valuable. I didn't need them. I just needed to stop pretending I did. The Seattle skyline stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of the hotel lounge. I had chosen this location carefully, neutral territory away from CyberCore's reach, but professional enough for what was about to unfold. Elena Vasquez walked in at exactly 2 p.m., her presence commanding attention even in a room full of tech executives. She had built Meridian Technologies from a small regional firm into a logistics powerhouse by making smart technology decisions and trusting the right people. Evelyn, she clasped my hand with that familiar firm grip. You look different, more centered. I smiled, gesturing to the corner table I had secured with a perfect view of Elliott Bay. Just seeing things more clearly these days. We settled with our drinks, her green tea, my black coffee. For the first few minutes, we discussed the quarterly review, system performance metrics, the usual technical pleasantries. But Elena wasn't one for extended small talk. So, she said, setting down her cup deliberately, want to tell me what's really happening at CyberCore? I had prepared for this moment, rehearsed different approaches. But sitting across from her now, I chose radical honesty. Let me ask you something, Elena. In all our interactions over the past year, how often have you dealt directly with Derek or Michael versus working with me? She leaned back, studying me with those sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. You know the answer to that. Say it anyway. 90% of our technical discussions, problem-solving sessions, and strategic planning has been with you. The others show up for signature meetings and photo opportunities. I nodded slowly. And if I told you I was reconsidering my professional situation? The silence stretched between us, heavy with implication. Elena had built her company by reading between the lines, by understanding that business relationships were about people, not corporate letterheads. I'd say, she began carefully, that Meridian has some significant security upgrades planned for Q2. Projects that require someone who truly understands our infrastructure, not someone reading from a PowerPoint presentation. Hypothetically, what if that someone was operating independently? She pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, then looked back at me. We've allocated $8 million for the Q2 security expansion. I've been dreading working with CyberCore's account management team on the implementation. They treat our security concerns like checkbox items. But I don't. No, she said simply. You don't. I reached into my portfolio and withdrew a single document, not a formal proposal, just a strategic overview of what an independent cybersecurity consultant could offer. Personalized service, cutting-edge solutions, no corporate bureaucracy, no Derek Walsh taking credit for technical work he couldn't spell. Elena read it in complete silence, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her jacket pocket. How quickly could you be operational? 1 week from the decision point. And CyberCore? Legal complications? Non-competes. I've reviewed everything thoroughly. My contract allows immediate resignation with standard notice. The non-compete has significant limitations. It restricts me from recruiting their employees, not from competing directly. As for client relationships, I met her gaze directly. Those belong to whoever earns them. Elena stood, smoothing her blazer. Our board meets Monday morning to approve Q2 budget allocations. It would be problematic if we had to explain delays due to consultant availability. The message was unmistakable. I had until Monday. Understood. She paused at the table's edge. Evelyn, I've been in this industry for 15 years. I've learned to distinguish between companies that sell solutions and individuals who create them. Don't make me wait much longer to work with someone who actually understands what we're building. After she left, I remained in the lounge, watching ferries navigate the gray waters of Puget Sound. My phone buzzed with the usual afternoon chaos from Cybercore. Derek requesting status updates, Michael scheduling another pointless meeting, the corporate machine grinding forward without understanding how close it was to losing its most essential component. I opened my laptop and pulled up the LLC registration documents James's attorney had prepared. Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions. Clean, professional, mine. My cursor hovered over the submit button. $3,500. That's all they needed to do. Acknowledge my contribution with a gesture so small it wouldn't have registered on their quarterly reports. Instead, they had shown me exactly what I was worth to them, nothing more than a technical resource to be exploited. I clicked submit. The confirmation appeared instantly. Your Washington State LLC registration has been approved. The first irreversible step in a plan that would teach them the true cost of undervaluing expertise. I closed the laptop and ordered another coffee. There was still work to do at Cybercore, loose ends to tie up, a resignation letter to craft, and one final performance to deliver. They wanted me to be grateful for my position. By Monday morning, they would understand exactly what they had lost. Thursday night found me in my home office, surrounded by the digital architecture of a new beginning. The business bank account was active with my initial investment. The federal EIN had arrived in my inbox. A virtual assistant I had worked with on freelance projects was already configuring our customer relationship management system. Ms. Martinez, the secure communication portal is ready for client integration. Her message appeared on our encrypted chat. Should I proceed with the penetration testing protocols? Go ahead, Lynn. Make sure every vulnerability scan comes back clean. We're handling Fortune 500 security data from day one. While she worked, I reviewed my other preparations. 2 cybersecurity specialists I had met at DEF CON conferences had agreed to join as contractors, both brilliant minds frustrated with corporate limitations. A network infrastructure expert from my graduate program had practically volunteered when I mentioned my plans over encrypted messages. My phone rang at 11:30 p.m. Marcus from Cybercore. Hey, he said, his voice hushed. You're not at the office. That's unusual. Working from home tonight. Needed to concentrate. Evelyn, he paused. You're leaving, aren't you? I chose my words carefully. I'm evaluating opportunities. Good. This place is toxic. Derek's been in meetings all week with legal and finance. Something about protecting intellectual property and key client relationships. They're paranoid about something. Interesting. Had Elena made contact already? That wasn't her usual style, but the timeline was compressed. Thanks for the heads up. I appreciate the loyalty. Just be careful, okay? Derek's vindictive when he feels threatened. And he definitely feels threatened by you. After we disconnected, I returned to my screens. The temporary website was live, professional, secure, optimized for the keywords Meridian's team would search. The entire technical infrastructure for Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions had cost me less than Derek's monthly car payment. Friday morning, I arrived at Cybercore wearing my best suit. If anyone noticed, they would assume I had a client presentation. The truth was simpler. I wanted to look professional for what was coming. The atmosphere was different, charged with an undercurrent of tension. Hushed conversations died when I walked past. Derek's office door remained closed, though I could see shadows moving behind the frosted glass through heated discussions. I settled into my routine with the calm of someone who had already mentally departed. Updated the Meridian security protocols one final time. Responded to emails with helpful information for my eventual replacement. Quietly transferred my personal research notes to encrypted storage, preparing for the knowledge transfer that would never happen. At 10:45 a.m., my phone vibrated. An email from Elena, sent to my personal address. Board-approved independent contractor budget. Formal RFP for Q2 security expansion being issued Monday, 8 a.m. 3 consultants under consideration. Suggest comprehensive proposal submission. 3 consultants. I smiled, knowing Cybercore wasn't one of them. Elena was giving me the weekend to prepare while Derek remained completely unaware his biggest client was about to vanish. I opened a new document and began crafting my resignation letter. Direct, professional, effective Monday morning. No explanations, no accusations, just the facts delivered with surgical precision. Evelyn. Derek's voice cut through my concentration. He stood at my cubicle entrance, his face a mask of forced calm, but his eyes betrayed genuine worry. Conference room.
Now.
I saved my work, locked my workstation, and followed him. Michael was already there, along with a woman from legal I didn't recognize. Corporate intimidation tactics 101. Sit, Derek commanded, abandoning any pretense of civility. I sat, crossing my legs, projecting the relaxed confidence of someone who had already won. We've received some concerning reports, the legal representative began, clearly the designated speaker, about potential conflicts of interest, about unauthorized client communications. So that was their angle. Try to box me in with vague accusations, hoping I would panic and reveal something actionable. I'm not aware of any conflicts, I said calmly. All my client communications follow Cybercore protocols and are documented in our CRM system. Really? Derek leaned forward, his mask slipping completely. Because I find it very interesting that Elena Vasquez has been asking specific questions about your availability for Q2 projects. Elena often asks about technical resource allocation. She's detail-oriented about project staffing. Technical resource allocation, Michael repeated mockingly. Is that what we're calling it? The legal representative shuffled papers nervously. Ms. Martinez, we'd like to review your recent communications with Meridian Technologies. Full transparency would be in everyone's best interest. I'd be happy to comply with any formal legal requests through proper channels, I replied. Though I should note that attempting to access personal communications without probable cause might create its own legal complications. The room fell silent. They had expected intimidation to work, had assumed I would crack under pressure, and confess to some imaginary wrongdoing. Instead, they had found someone who had spent the weekend consulting with an excellent attorney. Derek's face turned an alarming shade of purple. You work for us, Evelyn. Don't forget that. Of course, I said, standing smoothly. Is there anything else? I have the Morrison security audit to complete. They had nothing concrete, and we all knew it. This was a fishing expedition born of paranoia, not evidence. I returned to my desk and reopened my resignation letter. Monday morning seemed too far away. Why wait when the decision was already made? My phone buzzed. Another message from Elena. Heard Cybercore management is asking questions. Everything secure on your end? Perfectly secure, I typed back. Proposal will be ready Sunday evening. The rest of Friday passed in a surreal bubble of hyper-awareness. Every glance felt loaded with suspicion. Every conversation potentially monitored. But I continued my work methodically, professionally, letting them wonder what they couldn't prove. At 5:30 p.m., I powered down my workstation, collected my personal items, now completely cleared from my desk, and headed for the elevator. Monday morning would bring a new reality for everyone at Cybercore. But first, I had a $50 million proposal to write. Monday morning, 6:15 a.m. I stood in the empty parking lot of Cybercore Solutions, watching early arrivals filter through the entrance. My resignation letter sat in my jacket pocket, printed on quality paper, signed with the Mont Blanc pen my father had given me when I earned my master's degree. I had spent the weekend crafting the perfect proposal for Meridian, 62 pages of advanced cybersecurity solutions, innovative protocols, and cost projections that undercut Cybercore by 40% while delivering exponentially greater value. More than that, it was a document that spoke Elena's language because I was the one who had learned her company's unique requirements. The security guard waved as I passed through the lobby. Early morning, Ms. Martinez. The earliest, I replied, meaning it in ways he couldn't imagine. Derek's office was already illuminated. No surprise there. He had probably spent the weekend strategizing with lawyers, trying to find leverage that didn't exist. I walked directly to my workstation, bypassing any possibility of interception. First, I placed my resignation letter precisely in the center of Derek's desk. No drama, no ceremony, just 5 paragraphs that would reshape this company's future. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position as Senior Cybersecurity Architect at CyberCore Solutions. All current projects have been documented and are accessible through our standard systems. Company equipment has been returned to IT services. I have chosen to pursue opportunities where technical expertise is valued appropriately, not treated as a commodity. Per Section 7.2 of my employment agreement, no extended notice period is required for voluntary resignation. Next, the email. I had composed it Sunday night, scheduled to send at exactly 7 a.m., CCing the entire technical team, key account managers, and most importantly, several talented engineers who deserved to know why their mentor was disappearing. Team, effective immediately, I have resigned from CyberCore to establish an independent cybersecurity consultancy. For colleagues working on Meridian-related projects, all technical documentation has been updated in our shared repositories. To the engineers I've had the privilege of mentoring, never let anyone convince you that technical excellence should be subordinate to corporate politics. Excellence demands recognition, not apologies. Evelyn Martinez, founder, Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions. I gathered the few remaining personal items I had left as decoys: a coffee mug, a small succulent, a framed certificate for my CSP certification. Everything else of value had been transferred home systematically over the past week. 7 a.m. arrived like a digital thunderclap. Somewhere in the building, email notifications were exploding across smartphones and computer screens. The news would spread through the office like wildfire, traveling through coffee stations and cubicle conversations at the speed of corporate gossip. My phone immediately lit up with notifications. I ignored them all except one. Elena Vasquez. Proposal received and under review. Board meeting moved to 8 a.m. this morning. Decision by 9 a.m. Contract courier standing by. She was accelerating the timeline. Elena had probably anticipated Derek's reaction and wanted the transition completed before CyberCore could mount any interference campaign. Evelyn. Derek's voice boomed across the floor like an earthquake. He stood in his office doorway, my resignation letter crumpled in his fist, his face a shade of red that suggested dangerously elevated blood pressure. You can't just... We need to discuss this. No, I said simply, not breaking stride toward the elevator. We don't. You think you can steal our clients? I'll bury you in litigation. You signed a non-compete. Derek, I stopped at the elevator bank, turning to face him one final time. The entire floor was watching now, dozens of faces peering over cubicle walls. Meridian was never your client. They were mine. I brought them in, I managed their security needs, I kept them satisfied while you collected bonuses and played golf. The only mistake I made was waiting this long to leave. The elevator doors opened with perfect timing. Oh, and Derek, I added as I stepped inside. That $3,500 performance bonus you denied me? Elena's Q2 contract alone will net me more than your annual salary. My first quarterly payment will be approximately 15 times what you thought I wasn't worth. I pressed the lobby button and watched Derek's furious face disappear behind closing steel doors. By the time I reached my car, my phone showed 23 missed calls from various CyberCore extensions. I blocked them systematically one by one. That chapter was finished. The drive to my new office took 12 minutes through downtown Seattle traffic. I had leased a modern space in a tech hub building, exposed brick, natural light, everything CyberCore's sterile corporate environment wasn't. Lynn had worked through the weekend preparing everything. The office was fully operational with secure networks, encrypted communication systems, and a coffee machine that actually functioned properly. Ms. Martinez, she smiled from her temporary workstation. Courier delivery waiting for your signature. Inside the envelope was Elena's contract, $8.2 million for Q2 security upgrades, with performance bonuses that would make Derek weep. I signed it using the same Montblanc pen, officially launching Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions with the biggest contract win in my career. Congratulations, Lynn said, noting the contract value. Should I contact the team members who confirmed availability? My phone was ringing constantly now, blocked CyberCore numbers, mixed with industry contacts who had heard the news through professional networks. I answered only the ones that mattered. Evelyn, it's James Rodriguez. Holy shit, the entire Seattle tech community is talking about your move. Elena Vasquez just announced her new consulting partnership. Derek Walsh is reportedly having a complete meltdown. Business is business, I replied, but I was smiling. The morning continued in a blur of positive reinforcement. 3 of my former colleagues texted resignation letters they were preparing to submit. 2 other Fortune 500 companies reached out about potential partnerships. A cybersecurity journalist wanted to interview me about the changing dynamics of tech talent retention. But the call I enjoyed most came at 11:15 a.m. from an unknown number that turned out to be CyberCore's CEO. Ms. Martinez, this is Robert Chen. I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding. I'm sure we can resolve this situation to everyone's satisfaction. Mr. Chen, I interrupted politely. The situation was resolved when your management team decided my technical expertise was worth less than their coffee budget. I've simply accepted their valuation and acted accordingly. But Meridian has chosen to work with a consultant who values their security requirements. I suggest you ask Derek why that consultant is no longer affiliated with CyberCore. I disconnected before he could respond. Outside my window, Seattle hummed with Monday morning energy. Somewhere across town, CyberCore was in crisis mode, desperately trying to understand how they had lost their most valuable client and their most capable architect in a single morning. The answer was beautifully simple. They had forgotten that in the technology industry, expertise is everything. Companies are just legal structures. The real value walks out the door every evening and chooses whether to return the next morning. I had simply chosen not to return. The collapse of CyberCore's cybersecurity division was swift and devastating. By Tuesday afternoon, Lynn was forwarding the intelligence from contacts still inside the company. Emergency all-hands meeting called for 2 p.m. Derek hasn't been seen since yesterday morning. Michael's been pacing the executive floor like a caged animal. I was reviewing security protocols for Elena's infrastructure expansion when the next update arrived. 3 more senior engineers just submitted resignations. They're citing leadership failures and toxic work environment. HR is in panic mode. The irony was delicious. For years, Derek had treated technical talent as interchangeable resources, forgetting that expertise and relationships couldn't be replaced with job postings. Wednesday brought more serious developments. An industry blog published a scathing analysis titled, "How CyberCore Lost More Than a Client. They Lost Their Future." The article included quotes from unnamed industry insiders painting a picture of systematic undervaluation of technical staff. They didn't just lose Evelyn Martinez. They lost the person who understood why clients stayed loyal. That's not something you can hire from a recruiting firm. My phone rang constantly with opportunity calls. 3 major corporations wanted to discuss cybersecurity consulting. 2 venture capital firms inquired about expansion funding. A startup accelerator offered office space and mentorship resources. But the most satisfying news came Thursday morning from Marcus, who had finally submitted his own resignation. Evelyn, you need to hear this. Derek's gone. Pursuing other opportunities officially, but security escorted him out yesterday. The board blamed him directly for losing Meridian and triggering the exodus. Turns out they discovered he'd been inflating his performance metrics for 2 years. I felt no satisfaction in Derek's downfall. That would have required caring about him personally. He was simply experiencing the consequences of his choices, just as I was benefiting from mine. But CyberCore wasn't finished bleeding. Friday brought news that 2 more major clients were reassessing their cybersecurity partnerships. The stock price, already falling after news of the Meridian departure leaked, dropped another 18%. A financial newsletter ran a headline that made me smile. Win $3,500 in denied bonuses costs $50 million in revenue. The article dissected CyberCore's leadership failures with surgical precision, noting how short-sighted compensation decisions had triggered a talent exodus that destroyed their competitive advantage. 3 months after my departure from Cybercore, I stood in our expanded office space, watching my team of 12 specialists prepare for our largest project yet, a $25 million cybersecurity overhaul for a healthcare consortium. Elena had joined our advisory board, bringing her logistics expertise and industry connections. Marcus had become my VP of Technical Operations, finally working somewhere his skills were valued appropriately. Lynn had transitioned from virtual assistant to full-time operations manager. Evelyn, she knocked on my office door. The Wall Street Journal wants to schedule that interview about talent retention in tech companies. I had been avoiding most media requests, preferring to let our work speak for itself. But this particular story might help other technical professionals recognize their worth before it was too late. Schedule it for next week, I decided. The latest industry reports showed Cybercore continuing its downward spiral. They had lost 4 more major clients and underwent strategic restructuring, corporate speak for massive layoffs. Their stock price had fallen 52% since my departure. Derek Walsh's LinkedIn profile now listed him as exploring new opportunities in business development. Michael Thompson had been reassigned to an internal audit role, professional purgatory. The entire C-suite was reportedly interviewing for positions at smaller firms. My phone rang with a number I almost didn't recognize. Robert Chen, Cybercore's CEO. Ms. Martinez, I'd like to propose a consulting arrangement. We're prepared to offer significant compensation for your expertise in rebuilding our cybersecurity division. The audacity was breathtaking. After systematically destroying their technical capabilities through arrogance and short-sighted management, they wanted to hire me to fix the damage. Mr. Chen, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not available for disaster recovery consulting. Perhaps you should focus on why your company created the disaster in the first place. We've learned from our mistakes. Have you? Because 3 months ago, your team decided that someone who brought in $50 million in revenue wasn't worth a $3,500 performance bonus. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. And choices have consequences. I hung up before he could respond. Outside my window, Seattle's tech district buzzed with innovation and opportunity. Somewhere in a different building, Cybercore was still trying to understand how they had lost everything by valuing ego over expertise. The answer remained beautifully simple. When you treat excellence as expendable, excellent people find places where they're not. And when they leave, they take their relationships, their knowledge, and their results with them. Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions was living proof that the best revenge wasn't destroying those who wronged you. It was succeeding so thoroughly that their failure became inevitable. 6 months after leaving Cybercore, I found myself on stage at the Pacific Northwest Cybersecurity Summit, delivering the keynote address to an audience of 500 industry professionals. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek had been scheduled to speak at this same conference before his career transition. The cybersecurity industry, I told the audience, succeeds or fails based on one fundamental principle: technical expertise must be valued, not just utilized. When organizations treat their most capable people as replaceable resources, they don't diminish the talent. They only reveal their own inability to recognize value. The applause was sustained and genuine. In the front row, Elena beamed with pride. Next to her sat Marcus, Lynn, and 3 other former Cybercore employees who had joined Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions over the past months. After the presentation, the networking session buzzed with opportunities. 6 companies approached me about partnerships. 2 government agencies discussed potential contracts. A university wanted me to develop a cybersecurity curriculum. But the conversation that mattered most came from Jennifer Walsh, a young cybersecurity analyst who reminded me of myself 7 years ago. Ms. Martinez, I'm in a situation similar to what you described. My current company doesn't value technical contributions. How do I know when it's time to make a change? I looked at her earnest face, saw the frustration and potential trapped by corporate short-sightedness. Ask yourself this, I said. Are you building someone else's empire while they diminish your contributions? Are you being told to be grateful for opportunities to make them successful? If the answer is yes, then you already know what you need to do. She nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. And remember, I added, your expertise has value. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. The market will always reward genuine capability, even if your current employer won't. That evening, I returned to my office to find a package waiting on my desk. Expensive paper, familiar letterhead, CyberCore Solutions. Inside was a formal offer letter signed by their entire board of directors. They were offering me Derek's old position as VP of Cybersecurity, plus a $100,000 signing bonus and equity options. The final paragraph was handwritten. We understand our mistakes now. Please come home and help us rebuild what we lost. Home. As if that toxic environment had ever been home to anyone who valued integrity over politics. I fed the letter into my shredder, watching it transform into confetti. Through my window, I could see CyberCore's building in the distance, several floors now dark as they continued downsizing.
My phone rang.
A number I recognized but hadn't heard from in months. Evelyn, it's Derek. I almost disconnected immediately, but curiosity won. I wanted to apologize. His voice was different, humbled, broken. You were right about everything. I was threatened by your capabilities, so I tried to minimize your contributions. It was petty and destructive and $3,500, Derek. Not $35,000. Not $350,000. Just $3,500. Less than you spent on one round of golf at your country club. I know.
God, I know.
I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my marriage ended last month. All because I couldn't admit someone else deserved recognition. The old Evelyn might have felt sympathy. The new one simply recognized the truth. He wasn't sorry for what he had done, only for what it had cost him personally. I hope you learn from this experience, I said, meaning it. The next time you're in a leadership position, if that happens, remember that companies are built by elevating talent, not suppressing it. I ended the call before he could respond. There was nothing more to discuss. The Seattle skyline glittered in the gathering dusk, full of possibilities I was finally free to pursue. On my desk, contracts from 3 new Fortune 500 clients awaited my signature. By next quarter, Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions would be larger than CyberCore's entire cybersecurity division had ever been. All because they had refused me $3,500. 1 year after my departure from CyberCore, I stood in the boardroom of Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions, looking out at the Seattle waterfront from our new headquarters. We had grown to 47 employees across 4 offices, with contracts totaling $127 million annually. The acquisition papers are ready for your signature, Lynn announced, setting a thick folder on the conference table. Inside were the documents that would make Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions the official owner of CyberCore's intellectual property portfolio, their remaining client contracts, and their downtown office building. The company that had once refused me a $3,500 bonus was now selling their assets to avoid bankruptcy. The irony was perfect. They couldn't afford to keep running their business, but I could afford to buy what remained of it. Elena entered the boardroom, now officially our Chief Strategic Officer. The integration team is ready. Most of CyberCore's remaining technical staff have already submitted applications to join us. I reviewed the acquisition terms one final time. $12 million for assets that had once been worth over $200 million. The financial press was calling it the ultimate corporate reversal, the employee who had been undervalued ultimately purchasing her former employer's entire operation. Any second thoughts? Elena asked, settling into her chair. None, I said, signing the final page with my Mont Blanc pen. This isn't about revenge. It's about ensuring that good people don't suffer because of bad leadership. Marcus knocked and entered, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a grin that stretched ear to ear. It's official. The paperwork cleared. We just became the largest independent cybersecurity firm in the Pacific Northwest. As he popped the cork, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. A journey that started with a simple request for recognition and evolved into a complete transformation of the industry landscape. The celebration was interrupted by my assistant's voice over the intercom. Ms. Martinez, there's a Robertson here to see you. Says it's urgent. CyberCore's former CEO. I hadn't spoken to him since his desperate phone call months ago. Send him in. Robert Chin entered looking like a man who had aged 5 years in 12 months. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his posture, the exhaustion in his eyes. "Evelyn," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to personally thank you for keeping our people employed during the transition." I gestured to a chair. "Professional courtesy, nothing more." I also wanted to apologize. Not just as a CEO, but as someone who failed to understand what really drives success in this industry. "And what's that, Robert?" "People. Relationships. Expertise that can't be replaced by corporate policies or management consulting." He paused, gathering himself. Derek convinced our board that technical staff were interchangeable, that leadership was more valuable than expertise. We believed him because it was easier than acknowledging how dependent we were on people like you. I said nothing, letting him continue. "The $3,500 bonus you requested, we spent more than that on catering for a single board meeting. But denying it to you wasn't about money. It was about maintaining hierarchy, keeping technical people in their place. We thought we were protecting organizational structure. Instead, we destroyed everything we had built." "What do you want from me, Robert?" "Nothing," he said, standing slowly. "Just wanted you to know that some of us finally understand what we lost, and why we deserve to lose it." After he left, I returned to the window, watching the city that had become the headquarters of our expanding empire. Somewhere in the distance, the old CyberCore building was being converted into condominiums. The company that had once dominated Seattle's cybersecurity market existed now only as a case study in business schools, an example of how arrogance destroys value. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh, the young analyst I had met at the conference. "Just submitted my resignation. Starting my own consulting firm next month. Thank you for showing me it was possible." I smiled, remembering my own leap of faith exactly 1 year ago. The cycle continued, talented people recognizing their worth, refusing to accept less than they deserved, building something better. The intercom crackled again. "Ms. Martinez, the Seattle Times wants to schedule a follow-up interview about the acquisition. They're calling it the $3,500 decision that changed everything." "Schedule it," I said. "But this time, I want to focus on the future, not the past." The future was bright, built on a foundation of valued expertise, recognized contributions, and the simple principle that excellence should be rewarded, not punished. Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions was living proof that when you bet on talent over politics, everybody wins. Well, almost everybody. 2 years after leaving CyberCore, I found myself back where it all began, in a conference room, but this time as the professor, not the supplicant. The University of Washington had invited me to guest lecture in their cybersecurity MBA program, and the case study was familiar. The CyberCore collapse, when talent management fails. 27 graduate students listened intently as I walked them through the timeline, from the denied bonus request to the complete acquisition of my former employer's assets. "The fundamental lesson," I told them, "isn't about revenge or corporate drama. It's about understanding that in knowledge-based industries, your most valuable assets walk out the door every evening. Whether they choose to return the next morning depends entirely on how you treat them." A student raised her hand. "Ms. Martinez, what could CyberCore's leadership have done differently?" I considered the question carefully. The obvious answer is they should have approved the bonus. But the real issue was deeper. They had created a culture where technical expertise was undervalued relative to corporate politics. Fixing that would have required fundamental changes to their leadership philosophy. Another student, "Do you think Derek Walsh understood what he was risking when he denied your request?" "No," I said honestly. "He saw it as maintaining hierarchy, establishing his authority. He didn't understand that by humiliating his most valuable contributor, he was signing his own termination papers." After the lecture, I drove through downtown Seattle, past the building that had once housed CyberCore's headquarters. The condominiums were almost finished now, luxury units selling for prices that would have funded Derek's entire annual budget. My phone rang as I reached our current offices, a 40-story building in the heart of the tech district. Elena's name appeared on the screen. "Evelyn, I just got off the phone with the Department of Defense. They want to discuss a $200 million cybersecurity contract. Apparently, our reputation has reached Washington. $200 million. 4 times larger than the contract that had started this entire journey. Set up the meeting, I said. And Elena? Make sure our team knows that if we land this, everyone who contributes gets recognized appropriately. Individual bonuses based on individual contributions. Already planned for it, she laughed. Some lessons don't need to be repeated. I parked in my reserved space, a privilege I had earned rather than inherited, and took the executive elevator to the 38th floor. The Martinez Cybersecurity Solutions logo gleamed in brushed steel letters, representing not just a company but a philosophy. Excellence recognized, contributions valued, talent nurtured. In my office, I kept one memento from my CyberCore days, a framed copy of that original $3,500 bonus request, signed and dated but never approved. Not as a reminder of past grievances, but as a testament to the power of knowing your worth. Below it, a quote I had added. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Derek Walsh and his leadership team had planted seeds of disrespect and reaped a harvest of destruction. I had planted seeds of excellence and watched them grow into an empire. Outside my windows, Seattle continued its relentless innovation, full of talented people building the future. Some worked for companies that valued them appropriately. Others, like I once had, were trapped in organizations that took their contributions for granted. For those still waiting for recognition that might never come, I had one simple message. Your expertise has value. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And remember, sometimes the best career move is the one that scares your current employer the most. The market always rewards genuine capability, even if your current boss won't. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to ask for what you're worth, and the wisdom to leave when the answer reveals their true priorities. $3,500. That's all they had to pay to keep their empire intact. Instead, they taught me something infinitely more valuable. I was worth far more than they could ever afford. And now, everyone in the industry knows it. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate justice and professional vindication. If this tale of turning rejection into industry dominance resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own experiences with workplace recognition. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued isn't anger, it's excellence that speaks for itself. See you in the next story.